Hi, I'm Ratika Rose. Welcome to Awaken Your Truth, where I bring conscious dialogues and stories that will help you free your mind, heal your life, and embody your power. I hope to shift your perspective and create deeper understanding of yourself and others. Everyone has a story, everyone has a purpose, every experience has a reason. This show is about engaging with the truth of who you are, discovering your personal power and stepping into your authentic self so you can have more compassion and empathy for yourself and everyone around you. It's time for us to dig deep and learn to see ourselves and others with clarity so that we can come together and create a brighter future for humanity. When we free our minds, we can heal our lives, and this is how we build a powerful, transformed world. Awaken Your Truth starts now. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Awaken Your Truth with me, Ratika Rose. We're so happy to be back sharing about Women's History Month Part 2 today, where we're continuing the conversation about women providing healing and promoting hope. And today I have two wonderful guests with me who I work very closely with. We are all frontline workers and caregivers, and part of the theme for Women's History Month theme, if you remember from the show from a couple of weeks ago, is women providing healing, promoting hope. The theme is a tribute to the ceaseless work of caregivers and frontline workers during the ongoing pandemic, and also the recognition of thousands of ways that women of all cultures have provided both healing and hope throughout history. So part 2 of my Women's History Month, I was really wanting to bring on caregivers and frontline workers who I thought would really bring good perspectives to the audience, to help the audience understand the perspective of what it was like and what it is like still to be a caregiver and frontline worker during the pandemic, and really wanting to honor these two women who I've mentioned I've worked very closely with. So I want to introduce Reverend Dr. Evelyn Vegel, who is a Reverend of a church that I am a part of. And I also want to introduce Cindy Spencer, who I work very closely with on an advisory board for an age-friendly community of the city that we live in. So I'm going to briefly share their bios with the audience, so you have a little bit of their background, and then we're going to get into how the three of us have served as caregivers and frontline workers during the pandemic, and our experience of doing so, our personal experiences, our experiences of the loved ones and our patients and our clients that we've cared for, and just share our perspective of what it means to us, what it's meant to them, and hopefully just give you a deeper perspective and really wanting to honor all the caregivers and frontline workers during this time. So everybody, can we please first welcome Reverend Dr. Evelyn Vegel. She currently serves as a grief counselor at Heartland Hospice, helping families deal with grief after the loss of their loved one. She currently serves as a sabbatical replacement pastor at the Community Church of Sunnyvale, United Church of Christ. Previously, she served as a facility chaplain at the Santa Clara County Main Jail, working for a nonprofit that provides chaplaincy services to the county. Before attending seminary and becoming ordained in the United Church of Christ, she spent a decade as an editor and publisher of a small daily newspaper in her home state of New Mexico. And she enjoys the theater, opera, and walking her dog in her spare time. Thank you so much, Reverend Evelyn, for being here. And thank you for all the work that you've done, both in hospice and in the county jail. And I look so forward to hearing your stories on our show today. So thank you for being here. And then my dear Cindy Spencer as well. Cindy is a retired pharmacist and licensed attorney. She resides in the city of Sunnyvale for over 40 years and is a member of the Sunnyvale Age Friendly Advisory Committee, which we both serve on. Additionally, Cindy is active with the Sunnyvale Emergency Response Volunteer Program, which is also really important during pandemics. And she has used her education and skills in many settings over the years. And most recently, thank you so much, Cindy, has been providing care and advocacy for her elderly family friends during the COVID pandemic. And there's so much work, everybody, that I know Cindy has done, that I know Reverend Evelyn has done, and I know I have done during the pandemic. So welcome, 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 both of you. Thank you so much for being here. Just to start off the show, in this first segment, could you tell me a little bit about what you think Women's History Month means for you personally or in general to celebrate women during this month of March? If it means anything to you at all or not, because that perspective is really important too, right? I know that Cindy and I have spoken on this in detail. Reverend Evelyn, you've been in some of my healing services where we've talked about this. So would you both like to share your perspective on what Women's History Month means for you, if it does mean anything? For me, I know in the last episode, we talked about just really honoring, I think, all the women that have come before us to help us bring the equality that we see today for women, and just honoring all the women that we have in our lives in general that have supported us, and just, women supporting women. And in the last show, we talked about some of the women that have helped shape who we are today, what we were taught in our young age about being a woman and what our roles should be, but really how we've taken all of that on and created our own perspective for the life that we've wanted to lead as a woman, and how we've chosen our career paths and what we've done. So Reverend Evelyn, we can start with you. Any thoughts here on Women's History Month and the women that have been part of your life and shaped who you are today, and the woman that you are today?
I think there's a long way to go before women are fully equal in our society. But I think, thinking back, growing up in a very conservative Mexican family, Mexican-American family, is, my grandmother, well, here's a good example. So grandma would fix chicken, for example, for all the guys. They had a ranch and the men were all out working. And so she always saved the wings for her and me, because she said, these are the best part. This is the best part of the chicken. We're not going to let them have it. They can eat the breasts and all that, you know how they are, but we're going to have the best parts. And it took me a long time to realize that's not true. That was kind of the way of looking at the world. We're going to just take this little piece and give it to everybody else. And I think Women's History Month, and probably the whole year, is thinking, how do I give what is needed, but hold back a little bit for myself, so that I don't get pulled into that circle of pain that's out there right now, and learn how to work with it. So that's enough.
Excellent. So what I got from that is just really remembering. I think this month is just a good way for all women to remember to honor themselves, right?
Right.
And everything that we give to the world and to our loved ones, and just remembering to care for yourself and love yourself. So thank you for that perspective,
Sure.
Reverend Evelyn. Cindy, how about you?
Well, it's kind of interesting. I don't necessarily think about what I do in terms of being a woman, and yet I believe women have unique experiences and perspectives because of who they are and how they were raised and everything. So I do think we bring something special to what we do, but everybody has unique experiences and skill sets and things. So we all bring a unique perspective to something. What I think that I have brought, not just during COVID, but throughout my life, is how do you help others to be the best that they can be? And if you do that, you bring a positive aspect to everybody's life, which I think then flows out into those that they touch. And so that's kind of how I approach things. And I don't tend to break people into groups, or they do this because of that or whatever. But I do agree that it's nice to honor what women do, because they do bring a particular perspective.
And what perspective do you think that is, Cindy?
It's hard to generalize, but I do think that probably women are a little more calm, a little more measured. I can't say that for everybody. I don't like to generalize.
Right, right,
Um,
right.
But there's a softness, I think, that comes in caretaking, an ability to really listen
Mhm.
and see what's going on around them. A little more centered, maybe.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you. So what I got from that, I know that you and I have talked about this even before the show, is I think Cindy and I, probably Reverend Evelyn, you as well. While Women History Month is great to celebrate, we want to honor all the women. We want to remember to honor ourselves and the nurturing and caring and the love and the softness that we bring to our loved ones. But woman or not, I think we just do what we feel like we're called to do. Right. In the last episode, I talked about how I was raised, at least me personally, I was raised by, my father, who always taught my sister and I to just be independent women, not depend on anybody. Whereas like the history of women, as we talked about in the last episode too, for the audience that watched, and for Cindy and Reverend Evelyn, like we spoke about when women started fighting for their rights, and originally why women was created was really to support the man and raise a family and be the nurturing, caring one and taking care of the household, right? But that has all evolved, and all of those qualities that we've been given, as Cindy said, we do bring that to all the professions that we hold, right? But I think just to the point, I also don't really look at it as I'm a woman, and because I'm a woman, I need to be celebrated for doing what I do. While it's good to remember to honor all of us, I do what I do because I feel like I was called to do it, right? And because I'm a woman, I'm able to bring the qualities that we have to the work that I do.
But I think there's also a, a portion there where you have to be allowed to do that. And I'm thinking back to when I was at the jail, main jail.
Yes, please.
Maximum security men's jail, 1,400 men. And I was only going to be there for a couple of weeks while they hired a male, because they didn't think a woman could do the job with that many men. And it turned into 18 years. But it was, I had to prove myself. That first year was really, really brutal. I would go into, the men would come out for worship service, and one guy didn't believe in women pastors, so he made sure to sit with his back to me and trying to be disrespectful. And I figured, well, your ears are open, so we're just going on. Or another time I went in and there were two guys that were just challenging me, everything I said. They were yelling and carrying on. And I tried to stay calm. I guess I did. And my partner who was with me, my friend who had come to help give services, we did communion, and I was putting everything away. Normally you never turn your back on them, but she was with me, so I did. And I was putting everything away, and I thought, oh, what a mess this is. I'm never going to survive. And she says, you need to turn around. I go, oh no, why? And what had happened was those two guys got totally isolated. Everybody had come up for communion and moved to the other side and left those two guys who'd been causing trouble by themselves. And it was a real clear, we're on your side, girl, go for it. And after that, I didn't have any, I had occasional problems, but nothing major like that first year. So I think, as women break into these jobs that have been traditionally male dominated, you really do get tested. You really get, it's why we read about all this stuff that goes on with women who would become police officers and get razzed and harassed out of or my friend who was an iron worker because she made way more money than being a teacher. So I think we end up having, if you're pursuing your dream, it's not an easy thing. You are being tested again and again, just like, do you go to a woman doctor or a male doctor? Well, the woman doctor is going to have had to gone through a lot more testing than the male. So I think that I think if we're honest, when you see a woman in a non-traditional job, they've really put up with a lot.
Yeah. Thank you for
I
that.
think I would second that as well. Just, besides being a pharmacist and a lawyer, I was in the corporate world for a number of years. And, I always did feel the same thing, that you had to prove yourself, you had to do more. So I think that is one of the perspectives that comes from being a woman,
Mhm.
that it's been a harder road to do whatever you do for the most part.
Right. But we've still pursued it. And that's the important thing to remember, right? So as we move into commercial break, women, remember, follow your calling, what you feel like you're called to do, and just remember to have the strength within yourself to keep moving forward. Because eventually, just like what happened with Reverend Evelyn, and I know, Cindy, we didn't get too much into the past work that you've done, but I know I have faced many challenges with my male counterparts as well in my work history. Being in supervisory and director roles where I've had to directly supervise male colleagues that were not comfortable with that, and overcoming those challenges. I've faced many of those as well, but I was called to do it. I was put in those roles, just like Reverend Evelyn, just like Cindy through her corporate career. We stay strong, we move through it. Know that you are enough. I always on the show, I always try to remind the audience, you are enough. So no matter what challenge you're facing, or if someone is trying to back you off, stay strong. Remember your worth. Remember why you've been put in that position, why you're called to be in that position, the passion that brought you there, and keep moving forward. And eventually people are going to see the importance of you being there, and the importance that you bring to your work and to the people that are around you. So women, thank you for being who you are. Thank you for the positions you held. Thank you for being strong and overcoming your challenges. And thank you for listening. And we'll be right back after this commercial break.
If we could help you transcend your post-traumatic stress experience without drugs, grow an awareness of why you're suffering the experience, and offer you a solid, no-strings-attached money-back guarantee, would you be interested? Get a free copy of The Power That Heals, Sampling the Wisdom by Concept Theory founder Dr. Thurman Fleet. Visit concept-theory.org/free book. Or call toll-free 1-800-531-5628. It's time to live again, isn't it? You do have a choice.
Tagged Your It, Become the Leader of Your Own Life takes you on a journey of 8 life mastery skills that will help you step into your power and become the leader of your own life. Inspiring, real, insightful, and therapeutic, these pages help you discover deeper awareness, understanding, and relationship with yourself and others. Start to live a life that is full, joyful, and on purpose, with peace. Give yourself permission to live life through your authentic self. These steps can be used in your personal, professional, and social life. Tagged Your It, Become the Leader of Your Own Life. Available on Amazon. Get your copy today. Welcome back to Awaken Your Truth with me, Ritika Rose, where I bring conscious dialogues that free your mind, heal your life, and embody your power. I hope the show continues to bring a different perspective that will help you and others help you shift your perspective about others, so we can bring more healing and hope to the world overall. And I want to welcome back my guests, Reverend Evelyn Vegel and Cindy Spencer. And during commercial break, we were just talking about how we got into the roles of being a caregiver and frontline worker. And this is going to be an interesting perspective for the audience, because both Cindy and Reverend Evelyn feel that this was actually not a path that they chose, but fell into it based on just their life experience and what led them there. So I think this is going to be a very important conversation to have, why caregivers end up being caregivers, and the role of being so. For me in particular, I chose to work in the medical profession. I just knew from a very, very young age that I knew that I wanted to help others and I wanted to heal others. That was instilled in me from a very young age. And I think that was also based on my life experiences from a very young age, as I've shared with this audience many times before, of my years of being bullied and going through that, and just not feeling like I belonged anywhere, or not worthy enough or of myself, and not honoring myself enough. And because of that, I always knew that I always wanted others to feel loved and to provide that healing and support for them. So I knew that I always wanted to go in the direction of healing others, and I landed up in occupational therapy, which is both a blend of helping those with physical disabilities and mental disabilities. So that's how I personally got into my career. And later on in the show, we will discuss what it was like to actually be in the front lines during the pandemic. But since the show is about honoring caregivers and frontline workers, I think it's important to share the perspective of all of us on the show today of how we became caregivers. So that's a bit of my personal story of how I chose my career path and why. Reverend Evelyn was just sharing with us over commercial break, and I'm just going to let her sort of rewind and share with us again, because I love this perspective of how you came into hospice and your chaplain work. So go ahead, Reverend Evelyn, you can continue sharing with us what you were.
Well, it was never anything I intended.
Mm-hmm.
So, but my parents I lived in the same in my hometown, and I worked at the newspaper there. And my mother had kidney failure. And so, she needed to get dialysis 3 times a week and had to go to Santa Fe, which was 45 minutes away. So I spent a year getting her rides, arranging for her, somebody to take her, pick her up. And then it just became more and more caregiving. And finally she either had an aneurysm or a stroke, we don't know, and ended up in the hospital. And she only lasted a week after we pulled all the stuff. And then my dad died 4 months later because he couldn't live without her. So he went in for a pacemaker, which was a minor thing, supposedly, and never came out of that. And so I think we become caregivers by accident sometimes. We're the convenient ones that we're there. Somebody needs help. I'll start doing this. I'll start doing that. You can't do this on your own. Let's work on it, blah, blah, blah. And then pretty soon, before you know it, that becomes a focus of your life. How are you I'm going to go over there and take food, let the dog stay with my mom. I couldn't, anyway, that's another story. But I'll just tell you this. So everybody becomes a caregiver. So I had this Doberman who was also a therapy dog, and my mom at first was afraid of him, and then she wanted him to come over, and I thought I'd take him over before I went to work, and I go pick him up in the evening. I thought, what's going on? So I stayed, and what was happening was she weighed 85 pounds, he weighed 85 pounds. He would lie by the couch where she was lying, and then when she wanted to get up, he would stand up and she would grab him, and she could pull him up. She would pull herself up. And then she just put her hand on his back, and he would take her to the restroom or to the kitchen or wherever.
Oh my God, what a beautiful story.
I know. And you just think, wow, how does this happen? So anyway, after we sold the house and sold the estate, there really wasn't much reason then. My job was my job. It was sheer prestigious, but there really wasn't much reason to stay. So I went to seminary wanting to be a religion writer. That was really where my passion was.
Mm-hmm.
It was the big evangelical push of the 90s and early 2000s. And so I finished my MDiv. I worked in the Tenderloin for San Francisco. And then do I get ordained? It took me 3 years. I finally went and talked to a pastor, and I said, I need to be attached to a church to pursue ordination. And it took 3 years. Most people it's pretty quick, but me, and part of it was I grew up Catholic. And so my priest, who's still a dear friend of mine, said, if you feel that you should be ordained, then it's a call. You need to follow that. And so he was my big supporter. Mm-hmm. And then it was like falling into things. I did a summer internship at the jail here in San Jose, and they asked me to stay on. And I thought, okay, I'll stay on while I finish my program in Berkeley. And then it turned into, well, would you go here and spend 2 weeks? and we'll hire a man to handle the jail. Sure, no problem. And it just turned into years. And I couldn't do that unless I was ordained. So I got ordained. And then, then I ended up in the doctoral program, and these things just happen. So after the jail, it was becoming very violent. It was after the death of Michael Tyree, after the officers were convicted of killing the inmate. And in that time, it was time to move on. And a friend called me up and said, hey, there's this job in hospice. What do you think? I said, hey, that's great. And so that's how I ended up doing grief counseling, because I'd been working with people in grief for many, many years. And the COVID, we'll get to the COVID days, but it was quite a change. The regular hours dealing with people who I don't know, who I'm talking with on the phone, or having them come in and so a lot of things have changed because of COVID. But that, I think it's always been, I always felt like it was accidental that I got into things.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It does. And thank you for that perspective. I think it's important to note, even though it was not originally what you thought you were going to be doing for your career, you still, like we talked about earlier in the show, in the first segment, you follow that calling to do what you felt like you needed to do next.
Right.
Right. And you follow that. And I think people who are caregivers and frontline workers, really with all careers, but really, there really is that deeper calling that we know that we want to support people in a certain way, and we can do it. And that's where our heart is. Right. So our perspective as a caregiver and what we do is very, and how we view the world and other people might be a little bit different. Cindy, let's dive in that. I know that definitely you fell into your caregiving, and I know your story, but share with the audience your story of caregiving and why you actually chose to just continue following that path and supporting the people that you support now, even though it wasn't a career choice,
Well, it wasn't a career choice, but I think I'd like to just quickly say to your listeners, what Evelyn said and what I have experienced is follow what is in front of you, because I never could have mapped out my path. And as a pharmacist, it's a helping profession, and I fell into it because I worked in a pharmacy when I was in high school. And then I went on into career stuff, corporate world. Then I lost my mother, and I decided it was time to go to law school. And so I did that. And that was a helping profession. And I happened to end up doing high conflict custody and domestic violence cases and helping represent children. So again, another helping situation. And then COVID came along, and there were people who were very vulnerable, who were, elderly and in their homes. And I had to look and say, in my neighborhood, what could we do for those people in our neighborhood who needed special care? And I feel very strongly that just looking out your front door, who is around you that you can provide support to,
right,
at the level that you can. Right. And so that's kind of how I fell into all of this. It just happened. And so being open to those doors that open before you, don't be afraid of that, is really the message that I think I have to share with that. And I have, more specifics we can talk maybe as we go through this about some of the details, but yeah.
Cindy, you can keep sharing your story. We can go to commercial break a little later if you want to just continue how.
That's okay. Go ahead and do your commercial, and
okay.
We'll come back and
right.
pick it up. I've got plenty I can add in.
Thank you so much. So thank you, Reverend Evelyn and Cindy, for sharing how you came into your roles. But I think the commonality that I see here, Daniel, thank you for letting us go a couple minutes longer. I think the commonality that I see through the three of us in this conversation is we all went through something personal that we were dealing with, or that's the work that we were doing, right? then that led us to continue our path into caregiving on a deeper level, right? And I want to commend you both. And for all the caregivers and frontline workers out there, it's not easy work, what we do, right? There's many layers and layers that we deal with as caregivers and frontline workers. There's so many dynamics of a human being that we deal with as caregivers and frontline workers that people who aren't in this field maybe don't always see or understand what we're doing in the background, what we're doing in the foreground. Because again, I think as caregivers and frontline caregivers too, we don't often talk about everything that we are going through, right?
Mhm.
And that we are dealing with. It comes from our heart to support and help people. And we do what we need to do and we carry on. So I think that that's also going to be something really important to talk about when we come back from commercial break is, I mean, the whole topic of Women's History Month is healing and hope. So as caregivers and frontline workers are bringing healing and hope to the masses and to the individuals that we personally support, what is the healing and hope that we as caregivers can remember about ourselves, right? So, or what we need to give back to ourselves as far as healing and hope. So thank you all for the work that you do. We honor caregivers and frontline workers once again, and we will be right back after commercial break. Thank you, Evelyn and Cindy. Thank you, Daniel. We'll be right back.
If we could help you transcend your post-traumatic stress experience without drugs, grow an awareness of why you're suffering the experience, and offer you a solid, no-strings-attached money-back guarantee, would you be interested? Get a free copy of The Power That Heals, Sampling the Wisdom by Concept Theory founder Dr. Thurman Fleet. Visit concept-theory.org/free book. Or call toll-free 1-800-531-5628. It's time to live again, isn't it? You do have a choice.
Tagged Your It, Become the Leader of Your Own Life takes you on a journey of 8 life mastery skills that will help you step into your power and become the leader of your own life. Inspiring, real, insightful, and therapeutic, these pages help you discover deeper awareness, understanding, and relationship with yourself and others. Start to live a life that is full, joyful, and on purpose with peace. Give yourself permission to live life through your authentic self. These steps can be used in your personal, professional, and social life. Tagged Your It, Become the Leader of Your Own Life. Available on Amazon. Get your copy today. Welcome back to Awaken Your Truth with me, Ratika Rose, where I bring conscious dialogues that free your mind, heal your life, and embody your power. I want to welcome back Reverend Evelyn, Vegel, and Cindy Spencer as we're continuing the conversations of a perspective of being a caregiver and frontline worker in general. And now we're going to get into what it was like to be a caregiver and frontline worker during the pandemic. So Reverend Evelyn had touched a little bit in the last segment about how she did notice things change a bit. We're going to get into, and I pause and I exhale because even myself, when I was working, in the hospitals and nursing homes during this time, and Reverend Evelyn was also in the nursing homes during this time, and it so much changed, right? And there was a lot that I'm just going to read off there was a lot of choices we had to make as frontline workers, right? I'll dive into a little bit of that. There's a lot of choices that caregivers had to make, how work changed for us, how the inside of the hospitals and the nursing systems changed for us. And as the audience knows, as it changed for you as loved ones that wanted to go into the hospitals, seeing your loved ones, not being able to see your loved ones, but what it was like for us being inside, right? Dealing with that every day and seeing what we had to see. Shortages of staff that happened, what we witnessed in the field. These are just some bullet points that I think Reverend Evelyn and I can touch on. Cindy, your perspective is going to be amazing as just being a caregiver to those that you cared for during this time. I think what's going to be really important too is like what we learned about ourselves and the choices that we had to make, what we learned about others. There was so much over the last 2.5 years that have come up for everyone as caregivers and frontline workers, and what it meant for us, what it meant for our families, and then just sharing sort of our life perspective of caregiving through the pandemic. So these are just some of the areas I thought that we could touch on. So if anything, has come up for both of you, I think, Cindy, if it's okay, I'm just going to start a little bit with Reverend Evelyn and I, since we were both actually inside the skilled nursing facilities during the time of the pandemic. And as the audience knows, or if you don't know, the skilled nursing community and the senior and geriatric community was the highest risk during the COVID pandemic and still is during the COVID pandemic. And Reverend Evelyn and I are both two frontline workers and caregivers that have worked directly with the senior population and the geriatric population inside these communities. Cindy has also, with the few people that she supports, has worked with them personally in their homes. We will get to that perspective as well. But Reverend Evelyn and Cindy, please jump in at any time with your perspective here as well. But Reverend Evelyn, maybe we can share a little bit of what it was like being inside the hospital and skilled nursing communities during the time of COVID, and we can piggyback off of each other. I know for myself, myself also caregiving for two of my elderly parents, I had to make some very serious choices about work. And I get like emotional even thinking about it right now because it was hard, right? The choices we had to make. We're going in to support these people. Thank you, audience, for just being vulnerable with me here, but we have to go in and support our patients, right? But then we also come home to our families and we don't know if we're getting COVID, if we're bringing it home, what that's going to mean to them. Are we going to get it? Are we going to spread it? It's just, it was really hard, the choices we had to. I had to live in a hotel for 1 year. And I had to visit my family from outside the backyard or the front yard or just over phone calls because I couldn't come home to see them because I didn't know if at any point I was going to be infected, and what would that mean? And this is pre-vaccine and everything, right? So the choices we had to, how many hours did I choose to work? Did I go to work? Did I see my patients? Did I not see my patients? The income that I made that I didn't make during the time that I had to make. If I chose to not go in for a couple of weeks because I didn't know what was going on, because I actually had the ability to do so, my income was lost. I then was feeling the guilt of not being able to care for my patients because I had to care for my own parents. So there is so much in the thought processing and the emotions that we are going through as caregivers. What do we do? What choices do we make? What is the best decision for me as an individual? What's the best decision for my family? What's the best decision for my patients? What's the best decision for the organization I work for? I mean, it was just all of that, so and that's for the audience to understand. That's where a lot of the staffing shortages came in, right? Because we as caregivers and frontline workers had to make these really crucial decisions. We didn't know what was going on at the time. As frontline workers, we have made the choice to do this work. We have made the choice to go in and work with our patients, but then what choices do we make on an individual level when a pandemic like this comes up? That's the best decision for our families. That's the best decision for us. We as frontline workers were then going in and then being infected, right? And so you're infected, you can't go into work. And at the beginning of the pandemic, the time frames were longer, and then they've gotten shorter and shorter and shorter as the vaccines have come up. But just to understand the perspective that this is why the staffing shortages were there, and how much extra work it was on everybody else inside to get to see the patients and get the work done, right? I mean, this could be like another whole 3-4 episodes in itself of just what was going on inside the hospitals, what was going on inside the nursing facilities, how we had to segregate populations, and within the nursing home itself, and just quickly make those changes and act, right? And then, and just sort of roll with it. But I don't even know, I can go on and on. There was just so much that, that we had to deal with inside, and just making the best decisions for the workplace environment, for our home environment. But Reverend Evelyn, just very quickly for you, being a chaplain, going in and doing your chaplain hospice services inside the nursing facilities during that time, can you share a little bit about how that was for you?
Yes, I didn't go into all of the facilities. Some facilities actually just wouldn't allow anybody from outside, just the nurses. And 1 or 2 didn't even allow the nurses in. They took care of everything, which meant we went to telehealth. It's very hard to counsel people on telehealth, I'll say. So the couple of the facilities, one demanded that first we call to make sure they'll let us in. Second, it had to be the first visit of our day. They did not want us coming from another facility with possibly transmitting COVID.
Mhm.
And I think in that first year, we didn't know what was going on. It was how
Can I,
we had no,
can I piggyback on that real quick, Evelyn? Because I think this is really important for the audience to understand as well. Those frontline workers that work in multiple facilities, if you could not travel, if you were in one facility, you couldn't go to another because you didn't know if you were going to bring it into the facility.
Right.
And I think what's really important for the audience to know about frontline workers are, so let's list them out. I mean, we personally are working in the hospitals and nursing homes, but so we have doctors, nurses, occupational, physical, speech therapists, social workers, the certified nursing assistants, right? And everybody else to the housekeeping staff that come down the line, the kitchen staff, everybody, right? But what is really important to understand is a lot of people in our profession visit multiple facilities a day because that's just what our work entails. Some people need to work at multiple facilities a day to make the income just to survive here in the Bay Area or whatever city they're living in. We have a lot of the nursing assistants and a lot of other staff that work multiple jobs just so they can earn enough to support themselves and their families, right? So imagine when you are not allowed to travel to these other facilities, your income is cut. You now don't have the income to survive or to support your family because you can only be in one place. I think that's, and sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I think that's a really, really important perspective to share. That, I mean, working in these communities, I know with the nurses and CNAs and therapists and even the doctors these days, guys, we need to understand it's not that they just go to one place. We really travel to multiple facilities to make and meet the income that we need. So all of this, the effect on so many socioeconomic levels with the pandemic was highly affected. So go ahead, Reverend Evelyn.
it's
really
true.
wanted to.
And so I kind of have the pre-COVID days when you just would make an appointment, go see who you wanted to see and make the rounds, you know, we had 3 patients there. I'd go see 3 patients. But when COVID started, I'm thinking of one particular nursing home that really never got overwhelmed by COVID because you could only see one patient and it had to be your first visit of the day. Now the issue became, is there enough PPE for everything? You know, we had to get our masks fitted and go through the OSHA testing and whatever. So you had the proper masks. I still in my car have all of my PPE because you don't know.
Me too.
The variant. We don't know if the new variant's going to go, you know. So there was the period before we had vaccination and nobody knew what is it. How is all of this being transmitted? We know, I mean, we knew, but we didn't know. And am I going to get it? I mean, I would come home and change clothes in the garage.
Me too.
Take a shower. You know, my skin was a wreck. And
I had a coworker that created a transportable shower, and he literally showered in the parking lot, changed his clothes, showered in the parking lot before he went home because he had a new baby.
Oh, wow.
These were the kinds of things that our frontline workers were doing for the audience. So I'm piggybacking on everybody. Cindy, please jump in if you need to, because I want your perspective as well. But when I hear something, it's really important, I think, for the audience to hear like all the different things that we had to go through as frontline workers. So keep going.
and then this was before the vaccination. And so I'm working with families that couldn't go see their loved ones. One woman kept calling, poor thing. I mean, she used to go feed her mother. Now, here's what happened with those folks. Families couldn't go in. A daughter would go feed her mom. And if the mom took 2 hours to eat, well, she took 2 hours, but at least she ate. But when families were prohibited from entering, then the staff doesn't have time to spend 2 hours with a patient. If that patient doesn't eat in their 10 minutes allotted or whatever, well, let's move on. And it wasn't cold, callous indifference. It was just, there was just too much work.
And every patient needed care.
And so they weren't getting the lengthy care that families provide. Families and loved ones provide by coming in, talking to them, reading to them, singing to them. spending time feeding them, which is the biggest thing, you know?
Yeah.
People don't like to eat by themselves. We like to eat with other people. And so that first year without vaccination was a nightmare. And I had a friend who ended up in a skilled nursing facility because she broke her hip. And, you know, her friends all gathered outside. She had to have them wheel her over to the window just to see her friends, but nobody could come in to visit her.
Right.
It was
I
the
remember
loneliest time.
I remember when those window visits started, or when, you know, and how that was. Cindy, Reverend Evelyn, if it's okay, I just want Cindy to share any perspective she had of caregiving in a home.
Yeah, well,
as well.
I'd like to piggyback a little bit on what you guys have been talking about, because there's really a couple situations I've been involved with recently. One is a family member who had just moved into an assisted living facility 2 weeks before COVID hit. So there was no time for her to get acclimated to a new type of living situation before it was all locked down. And nobody could get in. So all that support you're talking about from friends and family went away. And trying to get somebody, some staff who could come in and help us get anything that we could possibly do with email or a video chat or anything, you guys were struggling with low staffing, and we had no way to get in to help. And it
Right.
really exacerbated, you know, the person, well, my family member, but, you know, for others, the people that are in those settings, it was devastating because they couldn't get the support
Yep.
that they truly needed, because
Exactly.
they weren't staffed to do what needed to be done, and we couldn't support that. And so when COVID actually came into the facility that my family was in, I had to make a choice. Do I sit here and wait for her to get that, or do I do something? And so I chose to move her out of there, brought her to my home until we could get her set up in some independent living with my support. And now I help to handle all her financial and legal affairs and manage her living in household needs. So I can't do it all. I got to take care of myself.
Correct. Yes.
But I try to manage that and do the best that we can do to, as I said, you know, help people be the best that they can be to achieve their needs. The second situation that I've been involved with was an older gentleman. He's 96 years old. He's been a friend of mine for a number of years. And I happened to be at his house one day when he had a medical emergency, and I sent him off to the hospital. It took 6 months to get him back home because there were various medical problems going on. And so he went through 3 rounds of the hospital, then to a skilled nursing facility for a month. And then I used assisted living settings. And one time we even went to a hotel because I got so tired not being able to get in to see him at the assisted living. I thought, okay, I'm just going to have him be at a hotel for a little while here so we can interface. And I acknowledge the risks that were there. I mean, how do I know whether he got COVID and at the nursing home or whatever? So, you know, we had to wear masks and stuff for a while till I got more comfortable with that. But I finally got him home after 6 months. I can tell you the exact dates from when he went to the hospital and when he got home. In the meantime, we had his house remodeled, so it was, you know, more favorable to what he needed in terms of care. And he didn't have any family that was local that could help him. And what this really pointed out to me was we as a society don't have the kinds of services that people who have no one to step up and help them, we don't have anything to fill that need. I mean, I know that there's programs where, you know, first responders and stuff, they come in, they first line workers, they come in, they try to help, but then they go away and they've got other clients. There was no continuity of care. And what I found was I really stepped into a role with this friend to be that first line care for him. And again, I handle all of his financial and legal affairs and manage all of his daily living and household needs. And he has, paid caregivers and stuff like that because I can't be there. I have my own life. But it's been a real challenge looking at what we as a society have done and, how we can step up where we can, maybe not do everything, make his home be the best it can be for him so he can be the best. And he's, I would say he's thriving. It's great. It's just been a wonder to see the transformation through all the medical stuff to being back home and connecting with his friends and things like that, I think I've hopefully been able to facilitate for him.
And Cindy, I've been on this journey with you. And so every time I talk to you, I thank you from the bottom of my heart for just taking on that caregiving role, right? And for everyone listening, caregiving is a calling, right? So if you're feeling called to support, and like since everybody needs help and everybody needs support. So if you're feeling called to caregive, please do so, right? It's how do I don't even know how do I go forward with that? It's just it's needed, and I really just want to really just continue to honor and share my gratitude to all the caregivers and frontline workers out there that have chosen, whether intentionally or unintentionally, to take on these roles to support other human beings that really do need love and care and attention. And we just have a few seconds left, but is there any final thoughts, Daniel, if we go a little bit over, if that's okay, but any final thoughts of real quick, like final thought on a life perspective that you have had just as a caregiver through the pandemic and now where we are today?
I have one really quick one is, families have to support themselves, and yet they have somebody they love they're trying to take care of. It's very hard to do both. And so I always encourage them to look at the family medical leave, to look at what they can do to have some time with their loved ones, because that's finite. We'll always have to be working, but the time with the people we love is very limited sometimes.
Yes, as we've seen through the pandemic, for sure. Cindy, any last thoughts?
Yeah, I just find it, rewarding from a personal standpoint to know that if I've been able to help somebody get to a better place in their life, that I've done something during my time on this earth, and that, I'm retired now, and so I don't have to worry about the money part of it. It's just that giving nature. It's a very nice feeling to feel like you've been able to help somebody else.
Beautiful. Thank you. And I think if there's anything that I want to say to the audience and those listening, my final thoughts are, if you're a caregiver, if you're a frontline worker, remember, you are doing the best that you can with what you have. And remember to take care of yourself. That is the most important, because if you don't take care of yourself, you can't take care of others. Thank you so much for your service. Thank you so much for your work. Thank you for listening. I didn't realize how much more we could have talked on this topic, but maybe I'll bring the ladies on again to have a further conversation on caregiving and everything that we've experienced. But thank you so much. Remember to take time for yourselves. Remember to honor yourselves. Thank you, caregivers. Thank you, frontline workers, for all the work that you do in all the capacity that you do. Honor yourself. Take care of yourself. Thank you so much. And until next time. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to Awaken Your Truth with me, Ritika Rose. I hope that you heard something today that sparked a shift in your perspective to free your mind, heal your life, and embody your power. The world needs love, acceptance, togetherness, and belonging. My hope is to be a contributing force towards the new world we need to create together. If each of us can awaken our truth and live with more empathy and authenticity, that shift will radiate. Spread the word And tune in next time for more conscious dialogues of healing and transformation on Transformation Talk Radio and Awaken Your Truth with Ritika Rose on YouTube and across all podcast stations. For more information about how to work with me, please visit ritikarose.com.